This is CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the program. Our top stories: China will send its peace envoy to Ukraine, Russia and Europe in an effort to try to broker a truce in the conflict. Our other headlines: Europe and China must reject Cold War mentality, the message from China's foreign minister in Norway. Turkey's election is on a knife edge. President Erdogan faces his biggest political challenge in 2 decades on the final day of campaigning. Imran Khan, Pakistan's former Prime Minister, is freed from custody a day after the Supreme Court ruled his arrest was illegal. And tens of thousands of people wait in Mexico to cross the border into the United States after pandemic migration rules expire. China will send an envoy to visit Ukraine, Russia and European countries next week to try to broker a solution to the war. Beijing's special representative for Eurasian affairs, Li Hui, will be the most senior Chinese official to go to Ukraine since the start of the conflict. As well as visiting Kyiv and Moscow, he's expected to hold talks in Poland, France and Germany. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Shelby Wilder in Kyiv. Shelby, how significant is this planned visit to Ukraine?
Well, this is very significant in this conflict, and especially for diplomacy. We had been waiting on this announcement, and today China's foreign ministry said it will be sending its special representative on Eurasian affairs to Ukraine next week in an effort to promote peace talks. And last month, a phone call between the Chinese leader, President Xi Jinping, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, that was the first time they spoke since this conflict had began. And at that time, it was announced there would be a Chinese delegation traveling to the country, but we did not have a date. And during that phone call, according to Chinese media, President Xi said to President Zelensky that, quote, negotiation is the only viable way out, end quote, in regards to ending this conflict. We know that the Chinese delegation will also visit Poland, France, Germany and Russia as President Xi aims to bolster China's image in regards to being a peacemaker in this conflict. And Li Hui, the former Russian ambassador to Russia, will be leading this Chinese delegation. So there's certainly a lot for these two nations to discuss next week here in Kyiv.
Away from the diplomacy, let's talk about the war on the ground. Ukraine says it's recaptured some territory in and around Bakhmut. What do we know about this and the much anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive?
So we heard from Ukraine's military this week saying that they had been carrying out effective counterattacks in and around the embattled city of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region. We heard a top Ukrainian military commander say that this was inflicting huge losses on Russian troops there, and in certain areas Russian forces had retreated up to 2 kilometers. Now, Russia's defense ministry has denied these claims made by Ukraine. But in regards to supporting the statements coming from Ukraine's military, we heard the head of Russia's private military group Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, saying that also this week an entire Russian brigade had abandoned its positions in the south of Bakhmut. And otherwise, Prigozhin has just made these repeated pleas for more ammunition for his fighters, his mercenaries in Bakhmut. He's threatened to withdraw them. He has been blaming the Russian Defense Ministry for a lack of support and Moscow's military leadership. And now it seems that this feud between the Wagner Group and Russia's military is really just more prominent than ever. And in regards to this counteroffensive, the breaking news we've been following is that the United Kingdom is now supplying Ukraine with these Storm Shadow long-range cruise missiles. And this will be providing Ukraine's military the ability to be carrying out strikes on Russia's military and targets far behind the front lines. There had been hesitation from Western allies in regards to supplying Ukraine with those long-range missiles for fear of escalating this conflict or provoking Putin, but now the UK is seemingly leading the charge. The United Kingdom said that they received assurances from Ukraine's government that these missiles would not be used to carry out strikes in Russian territory and only in what they deem to be sovereign Ukrainian territory. Jamie.
Shelby, thank you for that. Our correspondent Shelby Wilder in Ukraine. Washington says it is confident a Russian vessel had unloaded weapons and ammunition from South Africa in December before making its way back to Russia. This is the sanctioned ship at the center of these allegations. Lady R was sighted in Istanbul on Friday. The South African government says it did not approve any arms shipment to Russia and is opening an inquiry. China has been calling for a ceasefire and peace talks on the war in Ukraine. Its ambassador to the EU, Fu Song, has been talking to CGTN's correspondent Juliet Mann.
Position has been explained on numerous occasions. So it can be summed up in one word: peace. So we would like to facilitate peace. And for us, what is most important to have the ceasefire as soon as possible, because we want to put a stop to the senseless killing that is happening as we speak. And that is very important. So we know that there are complex reasons for this conflict, and but the differences can only be resolved through peaceful negotiation. It cannot be resolved on the battlefield. That is our firm belief. And that is why China has been talking to both sides, both to Russia and also to Zelensky, the President Zelensky of Ukraine. And I'm sure you're aware that President Xi has recently made a phone call. And actually, China is sending a special envoy to try to facilitate peace. And he's going to visit Ukraine and some European capitals, and also Russia. And so these are the Chinese efforts to try to facilitate peace, because we firmly believe that whatever differences that may exist between countries, the only viable way to resolve them is through peaceful negotiations. It cannot be through war.
And you can see more of that interview in... It's the final day of campaigning in Turkey before presidential and parliamentary elections on Sunday. President Erdogan wants another term in office, but he's facing his toughest electoral challenge in 2 decades, with polls putting his main rival slightly ahead. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Trent Murray, watching events for us in Istanbul. Trent, one of the candidates, Muharrem İnce, has withdrawn from the race. What impact is his withdrawal likely to have?
Yeah, Jamie, that's right. I think that's a question many pollsters here are poring over in Turkey, trying to understand where his votes would go. There's a couple of things we need to say about the candidate İnce. He was only polling around 2%, so we're not talking about a huge number of votes here based on those polls. And where they will split, well, it seems that most of them, according to experts, will actually now split to the third candidate in this race, 3 out of 3, and that is another minority candidate called Oğan. Now, he's polling closer to 5%, but what that could do is effectively shave off some numbers from both sides here, both Erdogan and Kılıçdaroğlu. It is expected that the votes will split, not quite 50-50, but certainly to both camps, and that is because İnce is a former CHP, an opposition party leader and member, but he did leave that party with bad blood, and so many of his supporters are not expected to straight away switch back to that 6-party opposition alliance, which is trying to unseat the incumbent President Erdogan, as you say, now in his 20th year of power, really in the fight of his political life. He has used the final day of campaigning to prepare for a major rally here in Istanbul, whereas the opposition has been rallying supporters in Ankara. We're now less than 2 days to go before this crucial vote, and it really does seem as though it is still all up in the air.
It does feel that this election might be a turning point for Turkey. I mean, what's your sense of the mood there?
Well, what you're seeing from both sides here is an incredible amount of passionate campaigning. We've been out today in Istanbul and you are seeing campaigners from all sides just working incredibly hard to try and catch those final few voters that may still be undecided. And that is because the race is just so incredibly close. We've had two polls out today, both contradicting each other in many ways. One showed a slight lead for Kılıçdaroğlu, the opposition leader. The other one showed the slight lead for President Erdogan. What I can tell you is, speaking to sources close to the AK Party leadership, President Erdogan's party here, is that they do feel that their base around central and southern Anatolia, that AK Party wall, is holding right now. They feel that the tide there is starting to turn in their favour. But what is still unknown, the big unknown really, is here in Istanbul and Ankara. And just given the sheer population of these two cities combined, it really could make or break the result. The other big one we're watching out for, of course, is the Turkish diaspora abroad. They generally are more on the pro-Erdogan side of things. They have been voting in large numbers. We have also got, Jamie, a roughly 5 million young Turkish voting for the first time. Because of their age, they have only known one president, and that is President Erdogan. Whether, though, they're willing to vote for him for their first time at the ballot box, we will just have to wait and see.
We will, and we'll soon know. Trent, thank you for that. Our correspondent Trent Murray in Istanbul. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been released on bail for 2 weeks. The Supreme Court ruled on Thursday that his arrest on corruption charges related to gifts given to him by foreign leaders while in office was unlawful. The case has fueled instability in a country already struggling amid an economic crisis. Our correspondent Siobhan McCall reports.
Imran Khan's supporters celebrate as Pakistan's former leader leaves Islamabad's highest court on bail. He says there was no justification for his arrest.
They showed me an arrest warrant for the first time inside jail. It happens in the law of the jungle. The military abducted me. Where were the police? Where is the law? It seems there is martial law declared here.
The former Prime Minister's dramatic arrest on Tuesday ignited nationwide violence, leaving at least 8 people dead, many injured and thousands arrested. Khan and his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party say the charges against him are politically motivated. Many of his supporters are angry at the country's military, which he says orchestrated his removal from office last year. The tension threatens Pakistan's already fragile political stability. The country's economic crisis has also deepened after the government blocked internet services, with business owners fearing damage to their stores.
For the past 3 days, markets were closed and our businesses are destroyed. Protesters keep coming and going, so we have to keep closing and opening our shops. The entire loss is to the people.
No one cares for the people. There is so much inflation in Pakistan, and the people are fed up. Politicians are fighting for power while the public suffers.
Khan's party thinks his arrest could be a huge rallying point as he aims to return to power. But current Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says the country is being pushed towards destruction. Siobhan McCall, CGTN.
Rockets have landed close to Jerusalem for the first time since violence broke out between Israel and Palestinian militants in Gaza on Tuesday. One Israeli man was killed in the attacks. The Israeli military said it killed 2 Palestinian Islamic Jihad commanders in its latest airstrikes. At least 30 Palestinians have now been killed in the latest wave of fighting, including 7 children. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the photographer on the front line of a migration crisis and his pictures of the thousands of people hoping to make the United States their home.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans, grey rhinos, and unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. China will send its peace envoy to Ukraine, Russia and European countries in an effort to try to broker a truce in the conflict. Our other headlines: Imran Khan, Pakistan's former Prime Minister, is freed from custody a day after the Supreme Court ruled his arrest was illegal. Tens of thousands of migrants have gathered at the United States border, hoping to cross from Mexico before the rules change. An immigration policy known as Title 42 has expired, and it's being replaced by a strict new asylum law. Record numbers try to make it across before the midnight deadline. U.S. authorities say they process more than 10,000 arrivals at the border each day this week. Under the new measures, migrants won't be allowed in unless they apply online and could face criminal charges if they cross illegally. Well, let's talk to Francisco Vasquez, a street photographer who spent 2 weeks on the US-Mexico border documenting the lives of migrants. Francisco, welcome. I guess each of these migrants tell their own story, and you've tried to capture some of them in your photographs. I mean, just tell us about your experience covering the US-Mexico border.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me on. My experience down in Juarez and El Paso was very eye-opening, being that I got to spend time with families and migrants from most predominantly from Venezuela. But it was an interesting, eye-opening time to really, take in what's happening down there.
I mean, it's almost impossible to absorb these numbers when you read them out. Tens of thousands of people gathering on the border today. I wonder, what can a photograph do, one of your photographs? What can you do to tell their story that's different from the TV cameras?
Well, I'm trying to capture the humanity side of things. I'm trying to capture the positive side of things. I do feel that the media is intensifying the situation more than it is. I just spoke on the phone with a journalist friend in Juarez, and I can only speak for Juarez and El Paso, but he's saying that the streets are pretty much empty, compared to what was there like 2 weeks ago. They've closed down the walls that people were being processed in. So, but what I'm trying to capture is basically the humanity side, the intimate moments, and just for people to see that these are humans and these are people just like us.
Having witnessed this and this difficult journey for so many people and the treatment that they receive, I wonder what change do you anticipate the ending of the restrictions will now bring? What's it going to look like now?
The change. I mean, hopefully we come to terms and we let go of our political parties and really find common ground and find a solution, because immigration is something that's always been happening and it's going to continue to happen. So I guess, we can start by not politicizing the issue and just come to terms. I spoke with a police officer in El Paso on my second to last day, and I asked him what's happening or what happened, within those 2 weeks from when I first started. And the first thing he said was he brought up the President of the United States, and I was just kind of asking for an honest answer, and that's what I'm hoping the change would be, or anticipate is that we don't veer off into our own political parties and really look at the situation as a humanitarian crisis, because that's what it is. There's families, there's children, there's good people there that do want to come here and be, you know, productive citizens and contribute to society. Yeah.
Francisco, good luck with your work. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Francisco Vasquez talking to us there on his return to the United States in New York. China's foreign minister says Europe and China must collectively reject the Cold War mentality. Qin Gang made his comments during his visit to Norway, the final leg of his three-country trip in Europe. He met business leaders in Oslo, followed by a meeting with the Norwegian Prime Minister. Our correspondent, Johannes Pleshberger, is in Oslo. Johannes, what's been covered in Qin Gang's meetings today?
Well, Chinese-Norwegian relations are a little bit like the weather here today in Oslo. Very sunny with a few scattered clouds. A few clouds because there still are some disagreements between these two countries. Both ministers, the Norwegian minister Anniken Huitfeldt and the Chinese minister Qin Gang, talked about the subject of human rights, where his counterpart Anniken said that Norway does have concerns with human rights in some parts of China, while China's Qin Gang said that China is relentlessly putting effort into improving human rights in China and across the world. So besides this topic, the main issue, the main topic on the agenda was Ukraine. And just a few days before the Chinese special envoy is deploying to Ukraine, this visit was also, I guess, helping, or was meant to help China with finding more partners across the globe to find a political solution for the war in Ukraine. So China's Qin Gang asked and called upon Norway's leader, whose name is Jonas Støren, to help find such a political solution. You have to know that Norway is a NATO member, and it actually has a border to Russia. And Norway has been financially supporting Ukraine, but also sending weapons. So Norway is also very much in favor of Western sanctions against Russia, for instance, while China is opposing sanctions against Russian companies or international companies. Let's listen to what Qin Wang said earlier today. Qin Gang, sorry.
China will send its special envoy to Ukraine in the near future, and we will send him to Norway, or we will give our Norwegian friends an update in Beijing. And we look forward to working with Norwegian government in the peaceful political solution.
So there's definitely a field of possible cooperation between China and countries such as Norway to find a peaceful political solution to end the terrible war in Ukraine.
Johannes, politics aside, this was also about business. What was Qin's message to Norwegian's business leaders?
Well, actually, these business leaders, I talked to a few of them last night, they were quite surprised about this invitation by Qin Gang. And, but they were also very positive. They said, we want China to cooperate more with our businesses. I talked to the boss of Norway's big state gas and oil company, Equinor, who said, we are happy to talk more about our business, about our oil. Norway is one of the world's larger oil producers, especially one of the largest in Europe. And so there are a lot of fields of cooperation, but the main field of cooperation, as it seems, is or could be green cooperation. We're talking about green mobility, green energy, especially green mobility, where Norway is the world's leader in usage of electric vehicles, while China is leading the world in terms of electric vehicle production and battery production. So there are a lot of fields of cooperation, and Qin Gang said that he's eager to make these cooperations more prosperous for both sides, for Norwegian companies to make more profits while investing or while cooperating with China. So let's see how this turns out.
Johannes, thank you for that. Our correspondent, Johannes Pleshberger in Oslo. Young people in China are being sent to work in the countryside. Around 300,000 young adults in Guangdong province have volunteered for 2-year placements working in rural areas. This follows a call by President Xi Jinping to revitalise the rural economy. Our correspondent Huang Fei reports.
For a university graduate with an IT degree, growing crops may not be an obvious career choice. But 2 years ago, Liang Zhipeng decided to quit his desk job for an opportunity to join a village work group. It's made up of college graduates and employees from various state companies.
I grew up in the city, so I had no experience with agriculture or rural work. I was just filled with curiosity and enthusiasm. It's different from what I imagined. There are a lot of chores, so I had to become very versatile. But this is my hometown. I wanted to help make it better.
More than 5,000 fresh graduates across Guangdong are expected to join the work groups this year. Despite the low pay, village officials say the roles have been sought after.
A renewed call for rural placements is coinciding with record-high youth unemployment in the city. Official data shows nearly 1 in 5 young Chinese urban residents are out of a job. And with a record 11.6 million Chinese university graduates set to enter the job market next month, getting a job in the city won't get any easier. Meanwhile, there's plenty of important work to be done here in the countryside.
The volunteers have helped to improve local infrastructure, including by installing these lights and guardrails. They also go door to door each month to check on the elderly.
For families that have been lifted out of poverty, we are continuing to help them become more self-reliant. Young people can come up with new ideas to grow the local economy. They're also very good at promoting cultural heritage and are more environmentally conscious. The challenge for us is to encourage them to stay beyond their 2-year placements.
Tourism and live streaming e-commerce may be one way to retain young professionals and generate more income.
20世纪80年代末呢，就已经开始养殖了，养殖了30年了已经。
这个产量高是我们的一个很大的优势啊。
对。
也证明说我们莲塘这里的山好水好，这个环境好。
Guangdong wants at least 10,000 young people to join the rural workforce each year and promises to increase support for startups. Zhipeng plans to stay beyond his placement and is calling for more volunteers to follow suit. Huang Fei, CGTN, Zhaoqing in Guangdong Province.
The headlines again. China will send its peace envoy to Ukraine, Russia and European countries in an effort to try to broker a truce in the conflict. Our other headlines. Turkey's election is on a knife edge. President Erdogan faces his biggest political challenge in 2 decades on the final day of campaigning. And Imran Khan, Pakistan's former Prime Minister, is freed from custody a day after the Supreme Court ruled his arrest was illegal. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.